Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Cam, and welcome to My Road to Wolfman. In honor of Wolfman coming to theaters in January, I'm going to be covering some Wolfman films, specifically the Wolfman films released by Universal, all of the original ones from the 40s and the one remake from Joe Johnston released in 2010. So that's going to be an interesting ride, to say the least. But to kick off the road, I'm going to be starting off with the original, the classic, The Wolfman, released in 1941, directed by George Wagner and starring Lon Chaney Jr., Claude Rains, Ralph Bellamy, and Bela Lugosi, among others. But to help me have me kick off the road, I am joined by from Flet's Movies and Pop Culture 13, it's Kyle. Kyle, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm a huge fan of this film. This was my second Universal monster film I ever seen after Frankenstein. Like I said, thanks for the invite, man. I'm definitely excited to discuss the Wolfman with you.
The Wolfman series is really interesting to me because it's like it came off in like the second boom period, I guess, of Universal horror because in the early 30s, they were crushing it with Frankenstein, Dracula, and then Bride of Frankenstein and The Invisible Man and others. And then like they took a bit of a break and then they came back and the Wolfman kind of kicked off that second period of Universal horror, like at least in like it kicked off the 40s period, I guess we can say.
It definitely did, and it started a new craze, New Year's for monsters, and Lon Chaney Jr. I think give one of the best performers of his career. The way the Wolfman looks incredible, especially for the time. And it's a blast, and it's definitely a classic for a reason. It's shot black and white, and I just think the performance is amazing, the direction is amazing, the tone looks amazing. The Some of the effects they use in there are just I think it's very cool. Like I said, I really enjoy this movie. It's definitely just a reason why I love werewolf movies in the first place. So,
I think what needs to be understood though is that in this movie you don't see Larry Talbot, the main character, as the Wolfman until like the last scene, maybe
yeah,
a couple scenes near the end. For the most part, it's mostly Lon Chaney Jr. as Larry Talbot. First of all, getting bit and then freaking out that he's getting bit and then things happening off screen that he cannot possibly explain. And then, like in the last 10, 15 minutes of the movie, we see the Wolfman. But if you're going into the movie expecting the Wolfman to be on screen like a lot, I'm sorry to say that this is not the Wolfman that you're expecting. It's very much the Wolfman operates in the shadows, for lack of a better word.
yeah, and it's a slow build until you see the Wolfman in his full form, but they keep you engaged throughout the movie until you get to that point where it's executed. I think they do an awesome job to keep the audience you know engaged on watching this movie, and they do it in such a good, amazing job until when you get the Wolfman, it's executed amazingly. So
This
I
movie
think
pretty
anyway.
much this movie pretty much launched the career of Lon Chaney Jr. I mean, he is the son of Lon Chaney Sr., so he comes from horror movie royalty. I mean, Lon Chaney Sr., Man of a Thousand Faces. I mean, his career was long and ever expansive.
Liz Fratu, yeah.
Nosferatu, yes. Also, Hunchback of Notre Dame. So Lon Chaney Sr. did a lot. But
Oh yeah.
Lon Chaney Jr., interesting to know, didn't really want to be Lon Chaney Jr. For the first few years of his movie career, he was billed as Creighton Chaney, which was his actual birth name. It wasn't
Right.
until he came on to The Wolfman that he was billed as Lon Chaney Jr., which is kind of emblematic of what Larry Talbot is, because Larry Talbot inherits a Welsh estate after a long period of estrangement from his family, specifically his father, played by Claude Rains. That probably was an accident, but I found it pretty apropos that Lon Chaney Jr. didn't want to be called Lon Chaney Jr. and yet was pretty much lured into it pretty much like because it almost felt like fate or destiny. And Larry Talbot was brought into his family estate basically because there was no other choice. I thought there was
Yeah.
a parallel there.
Yeah, and his dad before this actually had problems with Universal towards the end that it left a bad taste. But then Lon Chaney Jr. decided to go with Universal and then look at his career that he had. And like I said, this was definitely, you know, this movie, we wouldn't have movies like American Wolf of London and Howling and all this stuff that we do in the 80s and 70s that came out later on. This movie set the stage for those movies to become, and even the rest of the movies you're going to be discussing them for the rest of the series. So,
Pretty
um,
much, it pretty much set the template for most werewolf films because
yeah,
I love An American Werewolf in London, but it features kind of a similar structure to that of The Wolfman. You don't see the main character in American Werewolf in London as a full-blown Wolfman until the bitter end, kind of similar to the Wolfman from 41, I noticed.
yeah, and for 41, I think the transformation scenes that they did for this was pretty amazing, especially at the time. But then later on, amazing effects came later on and be able to top that.
In my research, I found out that allegedly this was a really painful process for Lon Chaney. Like there was a rumor, and I could not confirm nor deny, so I'm just gonna say allegedly he had to be pinned down with fishing fishing needles to keep him motionless while the makeup was applied. And Kyle, you're way more of a horror expert than I am, so I don't know if that rumor's been confirmed or not. But from what I was able to understand, just in general, it was a painful process for Cheney to go through.
Um, yeah, that's 100% true. It was a painful process for him because at the time they didn't have, the mega effects that you have now. The the style they had to do back then was totally different, and it definitely was a painful process until they were able to move it into a more comfortable process for people that got into the makeup chair for hours. So yeah, it is true.
Another thing that I found interesting was that the makeup was initially designed for a movie called Werewolf of London, which came out a few years prior to The Wolfman. So it was not necessarily reused from what I've understood, but it was very similar designs, I guess.
Yeah, it definitely was. It was similar designs, and I haven't seen that other movie, but I did. Yeah, it is definitely the similar designs. I have seen pictures of it. Just haven't never watched that movie. But yeah, they did have similar looks. But it's amazing when the Lon Chaney Jr.'s werewolf has became one of the most iconic faces ever of Universal. So, and
But
it's
this
even a
is
NECA now.
Yeah. And this is not just a Lon Chaney Jr. joint, though
No,
he is fantastic. You got Claude Rains, who I mean, his resume is a mile long. Like he was the Roundup the Usual Suspects guy from Casablanca. Like Claude Rains is just like up and down. Like he was in The Invisible Man. He was the Invisible Man in The Invisible Man, and he just crushed it there. He's one of my favorite performances of any Universal monster film from that era. So
I
he
agree with you.
and then you got Bela Lugosi, whose role is relatively slim. Let's be honest about that. But it's Bela Lugosi, and it's always a pleasure seeing him.
Yeah, and then of course you also had Boris Karloff as Frankenstein eventually.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. And then there's just like I said, it's like to your point, the movie is engaging without actually having a Wolfman on screen, and it really comes down to the buildup and just how Larry is grappling with this whole idea of things are happening to him. He doesn't know what. He has no memory. Just one of the scariest scenes in the movie has nothing to do with the Wolfman. It's just he's tied to a chair like in his estate and like he tells his dad to like just close the door. I'm like that whole scene I thought was just eerie and just quite frankly very disturbing.
yeah, I think the rest of the cast does an amazing job too, and this movie also messes you psychologically too, because they add that effect in there as well before see what else is going on there. So yeah, they do an amazing job. There's so many other stuff they throw into your face that's just amazing.
Also, the movie nails the atmosphere pretty well because it's like smoke and fog as far as the eye can see, and it nailed like it was like gothic for lack of a better word, like before like gothic was a word, I guess you can say.
Yeah, it definitely was a gothic type tone with, and then it also had the fog effects before gothic ever came a genre in this horror genre. But yeah, they definitely were. This movie was definitely ahead of its time before a lot of movies came along. This, especially for the budget that they had, you know, they did something special with this movie.
Yeah, and just for perspective, the movie had about $180,000 budget. When I looked it up, it was 180, but it just you could just never tell because it looked like it was twice that.
Yeah, it did. It looked more than a budget that it had. It's just that it just shows you the creativity that they did and where they put their money in, and how talented everybody was from the cast and the crew to the director, everything. So,
I think to kind of put the period at the end of the sentence on this review, I think this is like we've been talking about. This set the standard for all Wolfman movies going forward. And there were ones that came before, like Werewolf of London, among other things.
of course, but
This is the one that set the standard. It's getting an amazing grade from me. It's one that it never gets old for me. Like I look at it and I just go, wow. Like there are just like it still shocks me. Like 70, 80 years after the fact, it could have so easily been just like an old relic, but it's still fresh somehow.
and for being that long of a movie, it still scares people, and I can understand why it scared people back then, but it still scares people now that do watch it because it's an effective film. It's time. It's. I think it's a perfect movie. It's like I said, we did have werewolf movies before this, but it set the stage for, for werewolf movies to come down decades to come. So, like I said, this is a. I think it's a 10 out of 10 movie for me. I have no problems with this movie, like from the makeup to the casting performances to the direction to the atmosphere, and it's got the mood of the movie as well. So it's just it's so many different tones in that movie that creeps you out.
Something that I find interesting when it comes to the Wolfman series in Universal is that this is the only standalone one. And then afterwards, it's Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, and then House of Frankenstein, and then House of Dracula. And Lon Chaney Jr. never gets a standalone Wolfman movie ever again. Like
No.
It's not like the MCU where like Iron Man got Iron Man 1, 2, and 3 and then the Avengers. Like or Iron Man 1, 2, then the first Avengers movie and then Iron Man 3. But Lon Chaney Jr. was like you get one Wolfman movie and then it's all like Monster Mash type movies for the rest of the decade. And I don't necessarily have a issue with that per se, but it's a shame that they never returned to the standalone Wolfman like movie in this era ever again.
I think it was a missed opportunity for them because I think they could have did even a trilogy really. They could have did something. I think they could have did something with amazing sequel to the Wolfman with something with him. Unfortunately, we never get to see that. But I hope that's why I hope they do. I hope they do like do something like that with these new movies coming out, especially the new Wolfman coming.
Well, if anyone can get something out of it, it's Lee Winnell. I mean, the dude made The Invisible Man from 2020, which was
Oh,
1,000 times better than I was expecting. And I've seen the full trailer now, and it was looking honestly pretty solid. So if anyone can get the blood from the stone, if you will, it's gotta be Lee Winnell.
100% agree for sure.
But I
'Cause-
pass it off to all of you. What did you think of the Wolfman? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to read what you have to say. Kyle, thank you so much for joining me. Tell the people about your channel, what you got coming up.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. You can, like I said, you can find me on my channel on YouTube on Let's Movies Pop Call 13. Um, like I said, I think on Sunday I'll be bringing on Mr. Hot Take. We'll be ranking the Alien Predator film in one huge ranking. December 3rd, we're still hoping it could be a different day, but we're still hoping to do a top 10 John Carpenter film moments, and a certain guest might be joining me for that. I'm not going to announce who it is yet, but the certain guest might be joining me for that. So, and then like I said, I do got a couple interviews locked down, and then just got email a couple days ago. Another Michael Myers, another person who played Michael Myers might be coming on the channel for an interview, streamer recording. So, and stay tuned for other amazing stuff. I got the rest for the channel coming up. So,
Yeah,
and
Kyle knows a lot of famous horror people, you see.
yes,
But his linked in the description. Go give him a subscribe. He does really good content over there. As far as this channel goes, my road to Wolfman continues by looking at the first of what I call the Monster Mash films, starting off with a movie I reviewed before, but I will be revisiting. It is Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. But until then, my name is Ryan Cam. The next one.